In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about tuples. We will learn how to access tuples, update, unpack, and join tuples, and also how to loop through tuples. If you want to learn more about Python and other programming languages, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it. It will be a great support. Let's begin. Tuples are used to store multiple items in a single variable. There are 4 built-in data types in Python used to store a collection of data, list, set, dictionary, and tuples. And in this episode, we're going to learn about tuples. We talked about list. If you don't know what a list is and how to work with lists, I highly recommend you to watch the previous section. I taught you everything you need to know about a list. Well, a tuple is a collection which is ordered and unchangeable. Tuples are actually written with round brackets. I'm gonna show you an example of a tuple. Well, if you want to create a tuple, you just need to actually assign it to a variable. For example, tuple, let's see, my tuple equals to, you use a round brackets, and inside the round brackets you want to select items. For example, I'm going to write car, and for example pen and book. Okay, this is a tuple. Well, you want to print it, use print and my tuple. Okay, if you execute this code, you see this is a tuple. Well, as I said, tuple items are ordered, unchangeable, and allow duplicate values. For example, you can have 2 pens as 2 items of a tuple. Okay, tuple items are indexed. The first item has index 0, and the second one has index 1, and so on. Well, when we say tuples are ordered, it means that the item have a defined order, and the order will not change. Okay, and tuples are unchangeable. Actually, it means that we cannot change, remove, or add any item to the tuple. Okay, after creation. Well, as I said, it allows duplicates. Tuple allows a duplicate. Okay, so let's see an example here. For example, I'm going to say second tuple equals to, and here I want to use, for example, car, and again another car, and for example book, and let's print this. Print second tuple. Okay, and now you see it allows duplicate values. Now we have 2 cars as 2 separate items of a tuple. If you want to actually determine the length of a tuple, you see the number of items in a tuple, you just need to use len function as we use it in the list and other data types. For example, here I want to use print, and I want to see how many items a second tuple has. So I write len, and inside len I pass second tuple, and now you see 3 is the number of items. Okay, there is an important actually note here. If you want to create a tuple which has just 1 item, you have to actually put a comma after the first item. For example, I write 1 tuple, okay, equals to, I just want to have 1 item, for example car. Okay, and if I actually leave it like this, it will not be considered as a tuple. Let's see, for example, the type of this, let's see, print and type. Inside type I pass 1 tuple. Okay, and as you see here, the type is a string. Okay, it is not a tuple. Well, let's see another one, my tuple, okay, equals to, for example, I use again car, and this time I put a comma after the item, and now if I print the type of the tuple, the type of actually this variable, you will see that it is a tuple. My tuple. Okay, as you see here, it is tuple. The tuple items can be of any data type. Okay, as you see here, I actually gave you an example with a string, and now I want to actually give you another example. For example, tuple 1 equals to, I want to use various data types, for example, a string, for example, a car, and I want to use a Boolean like false. Okay, and I want to, for example, use an integer like 21, and for example, another just string like John. Okay, and now if I print this tuple, you see it is a tuple, and you can actually check the type of this variable. You see it is a tuple. Okay, as you see here, it is tuple. Okay, now let's see how we can access tuple items. We can access them by referring to the index number, and we have to put that number inside square brackets, okay, like a list. Well, now let me give you an example. For example, tuple 1. Actually, I want to write some names of some actually fruits. For example, apple and banana, and for example, orange. Well, this is a tuple, and I want to access to the first item. I just need to write print in order to show you, and I write the name of the tuple. Okay, tuple 1, and inside this square bracket, I just need to give an index. For example, I want access to apple. I just need to give 0 because it is start with 0. You have to bear in mind. Okay, if I run it, you see apple is right here. If I, for example, change the index to 1, you see banana is printed. You can also use negative indexes. Negative indexing means actually start from the end. For example, here I write print, and I want to access the last item, which is orange, and I can use index 2, or I can use index -1. For example, tuple 1, and inside this square bracket I use -1, and you see the output is orange, which is the last item in my tuple. If you want to access to a range of actually items, for example, item 1, 2, 3, and 4 in a tuple, or so on, you can use a range of indexes. You can specify a range of indexes by specifying where to start and where to end. Okay, you have to bear in mind that the search will start at actually the start index, but the end index will not be included in actually that item. For example, in here I want to give you an example. Let's add some items to this one. For example, lemon, and this one. Okay, now I think it's better if I run it. You see the last item is here and the first item is here. Actually the second one, because the first one starts with 0. Now I want to actually try range of indexes. For example, let me delete this one, and in here I want to use a range of indexes. I want to, for example, start from index number 1 to index number 3, for example. Okay, and as I told you, index number 1, which is banana, will be printed, and index number 2 will be printed, and index number 3 will not be printed. Actually, why? Because I told you that the end index will not include. Okay, if I run it, you see banana and orange. Okay, for example, sometimes you want to start from the beginning and you want to just specify the end index. In that situation, you can leave out the start value and the range will start from the first. Okay, if I leave out this one, actually it will start from the beginning. Okay, and it is also true for the end index. If I want to, for example, print from index number 2 to the last index, you don't need to actually specify the last index. You just need to leave it out and just specify the first index. 2, and here you see orange, lemon, and this one is printed. You can also use a range of negative indexes. And by specifying negative indexes, actually you can also access to the items of a tuple. If you want to start actually search from the end of the tuple, you can use negative indexes. For example, let me just create a tuple. Okay, and now I want to show you how to use negative indexing. For example, I want to print to show you the output and use the name of the tuple, and between these two square brackets I want to use, for example, minus 3 to minus 1. You see the output is cherry and banana. Okay, minus 1, which is orange. Okay, is not here because it is actually indicating the end index, and so orange is not here, and cherry and banana are actually shown here. Sometimes you want to see whether an item exists in a tuple or not. You can use in keyword. I'm going to show you here. For example, you write a condition in here. If, for example, if apple, okay, in tuple, okay, you want to print apple exists, for example, and else you want to see you want to write print apple not found, for example. And if I run it, you see here a problem. Okay, in here I made a mistake. This is tuple 1. Okay, and now we have an invalid syntax. That's right. Okay, and now you see apple exists because apple, because there is an apple in here. Apple, the actual item number 0, actually with index number 0, its name is apple. For example, if I write here car, you see apple not found because actually this condition is false and else will be executed and this line is printed. This is the way you can access the item of a tuple. Okay, I said that tuples are unchangeable. It means that you cannot actually add or remove items once a tuple is created. Okay, but actually there are some ways that you can actually change tuple values. Actually, when a tuple is created, you can change its value, although it is unchangeable. The way is you can convert a tuple into a list, and you can change the list and again convert the list back into a tuple. Let's see an example. Here we have a tuple here, tuple 1, and I want to convert it to a list. For example, my list equals to list, and I want to pass tuple 1 here. Okay, now my list is a list which is actually the previous tuple. Okay, that tuple is converted to a list. Well, now I want to add, for example, I want to change an item of this list. I write my list, and between square brackets I want to actually specify the index. For example, index 1 equals to, for example, book, for example, and now I want to convert it back to a tuple. It is easy. Just need to write tuple 1 equals to tuple, and now I want to pass that string. I want to pass, sorry, that list, my list. Okay, and now if I print this to show you tuple 1, okay, you see it is a tuple, and to make sure, let's see the type of this variable, type tuple 1, and you see it is tuple, but we actually changed an item of this tuple. Suppose you want to add an item to a tuple. It is also the same way. You can convert it to a list and use append method, which is a built-in method for a list, and also again convert it to a tuple. For example, in here we have a list, we changed an item. Okay, now I want to add an item. Let's comment this one. We have a list, we have a tuple and we convert it to a list. Okay, now I want to add an item to a list. I use my list, okay, dot append. Okay, and now I want to give actually a list a new value, for example a book here, and then I convert it to a tuple, and you see the result here. Okay, as you see here, book is added to the end of actually my tuple. Sometimes you want to add tuple to a tuple. Well, you're allowed to add tuples to tuples. If you want to add one item, you can create a new tuple with actually the item and add that to the existing tuple. This is another way. Okay, this was the first way. You could use a list in order to convert that tuple to a list. You can change the data, and you can add, remove, or change specific item, and again convert it back to a tuple. But another way is that you can actually create another tuple and add the new tuple to the actually existing tuple, and this way you could add actually new items to the tuple. For example, here we have a tuple. Let me copy this one here, and I want to write tuple 2 equals to, for example, John and Alex. Okay, and now I want to add these tuples together. For example, I write tuple 1 plus equals tuple 2. Okay, and now I want to print tuple 1. Okay, you see it is the result of actually these two tuples together. And again, I have to actually emphasize that when you want to create a tuple with just one item, you should not forget to put a comma after that item, otherwise it will be considered something else like string or something else, okay, not a tuple. If you want to remove an item from a tuple, you cannot do it without converting it to a list, okay, because I told you tuples are actually unchangeable. So if you want to change an item, if you want to remove an item, you have to convert it to a list and then remove that specific item and again convert it to a tuple. For example, in here, in the first example, we append, and I want to comment this one, and in this time I wanted to actually remove an item list, and dot remove. Okay, and for example, let's remove apple. Okay, and now if you see here, apple is removed, and these three items are actually the remaining item of my tuple. Well, here you see I created a tuple and assign it to a variable. This is called packing, when you actually create a tuple and assign it to a variable. In Python, it is also possible to unpack a tuple. Okay, you can extract the values back into variables. Okay, this is called unpacking. For example, here you see here all these three items are assigned to a variable which is called fruits, and I want to actually unpack this tuple. I write here, for example, fruit 1 and fruit 2 and fruit 3. Okay, and I want to put them inside a round bracket, and I want to assign fruit to these variables. Okay, now if I print actually each variable, each of these three fruits, you see what will happen. Okay, each of these variables will actually contain these values. Okay, let's see. Okay, apple, banana, and cherry. They are actually the values of these three variables. Okay, now I unpack that tuple. Well, we have not talked about loops yet in our actual tutorial, but for those who are actually familiar with loops, I want to talk about loop and how to loop through a tuple. We will talk about loops in a specific video later, but just for now, I want to show you how you can loop through a tuple. For example, uh, you have a tuple which actually contains three items like this one, and you want to loop through this tuple and, for example, print each item separately. You use for and just a variable like x in this tuple. Okay, and you just need to print the variable which is x. Okay, and now the item of the tuple are actually printed. You can use actually the index number in order to loop through a tuple. Well, you use, for example, x in actually range. Okay, and now you have to use len in order to see the length of actually a tuple, and this tuple. Okay, and in here I just need to use actually the index, and we know that we have to put index between square brackets. This tuple, and I use square bracket, and I just need to give x here as index, and you see here the result is the same. You can use actually the index in order to loop through the tuple, or you can use actually the items. Well, we talked about how to join into tuples together. Let me just review that concept. For example, here we have this tuple, and I want to declare another tuple which is actually containing three numbers 1 2 3, and if I want to join these tuples together and create another tuple, for example, tuple 3 equals to tuple 1 tuple 2 plus this tuple. It doesn't matter the type of the data which actually each tuple contains. I want to print actually the tuple 3, and you see the result here. If you want to multiply the content of a tuple, for example 2 times, 3 times, or a given number of times, you can use actually star operator. For example, in here I want to actually duplicate the actually content of tuple 2. Let's use tuple 4 equals to tuple 2, use star and, for example, 2, and if I print tuple 4, you see here actually each item is duplicated. Okay, and you can use, for example, 3 here. Okay, sorry, you can use 3 here, and as you see, each of them is repeated 3 times. Well, there are actually 2 methods that are used frequently in actually working with tuples. The first one is count, okay, and the second one is actually index. I want to tell you what these 2 are. Okay, first I want to introduce count. I want to tell you how you can use it. For example, sometimes you have a tuple and you want to actually return the number of times that a specific value is repeated in a tuple. Okay, for example, in here I have a tuple that actually 1 is repeated 3 times. For example, I want to see how many times 1 is repeated. I just need to use count function. Okay, first I have to use tuple 4, the number of tuple, dot count, and inside this parentheses I have to pass actually the item, for example 1. Okay, let me comment this and print this to see the output. Okay, as you see here, 3 is appeared because actually 1 is actually repeated 3 times. Okay, now let's talk about index method. Whenever you're going to search for the first actually appearance or occurrence of a specific value in a tuple, you use index. For example, in here, I want to see actually the index of the first appearance of 8. Okay, I use print to see the results, and this tuple dot, okay, use index, and inside these parentheses I actually have to pass the that specific value, which is here 8, and as you see here we have 2 8s here, and it will actually return the index of the first 8, okay, which is 3. As you see here, first 0 1 2 and 3 is the index of 8, okay, the first 8. Okay, here is the end of this session. I hope it was useful for you, and I believe now you know everything which is necessary about tuple. If you want to learn more about Python and other programming languages, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments. I'll reach you as soon as possible. Bye for now.